endless. Each one flickered with scenes from lives long gone. Julian saw flashes of himself, painting in a sunlit studio, laughing beside Theo, crying alone in the rain. The mirrors didn't just reflect, they remembered. At the center of the grand hall stood a figure cloaked in silver mist. Its face was obscured, its voice a whisper that echoed in every direction. "I am the Mirror Warden," it said. "You seek truth. But truth demands pain." Theo stepped forward. "We're ready." The warden raised a hand, and the mirrors shimmered. One stepped forward, separating from the wall, hovering before Julian. It showed the night of the accident in brutal clarity, rain pounding, headlights blinding, metal twisting. Julian's car spun out of control. Theo's voice screamed his name. Julian staggered back. "No. You must watch," the warden said. "You must remember." Theo reached for Julian's hand. "I pulled you out. I remember now. You were unconscious. I got you free, but the car exploded before I could move." Julian's eyes filled with tears. "You died saving me." Theo nodded. "And you buried me in your art. Virelia, this place, it's your grief." The warden turned to Theo. "You are fading. A soul caught between realms. Only truth can release you." Julian stepped forward. "Then show me everything." The mirrors surrounded them, forming a circle. Each one played a moment: love, laughter, loss. Julian saw their first kiss, their last fight, the way Theo used to hum while cooking. He saw the funeral he never attended, the painting he made in Theo's memory, the years of silence that followed. "I couldn't bear to remember," Julian whispered. "So I created this world to keep you close." Theo touched his face. "And I stayed, because I couldn't let go." The warden lowered its hand. "You have remembered. Now you must choose." Julian looked at Theo. "What choice?" "Stay," Theo said. "And fade with me. Or return. Alone." Julian's heart broke. "I don't want to lose you again." Theo smiled, soft and sad. "You never did. I've always been with you." They stood in silence, surrounded by memories, love, and the weight of goodbye. Chapter 6: The Choice. The castle of echoes had grown quiet. The mirrors no longer shimmered with memories, they waited, still and solemn, as if holding their breath. Julian stood in the center of the great hall, his heart heavy with revelation. Theo stood beside him, fading at the edges like a painting left too long in the sun. "You created Virelia," the mirror warden said, its voice echoing from every wall. "It is your grief made manifest. And he," the warden gestured to Theo, "is the soul you could not let go." Julian's throat tightened. "Then why is he fading?" "Because grief cannot hold a soul forever," the warden replied. "Only love can. And love must choose." Theo stepped forward, his hand brushing Julian's. "I've been here too long. I'm not supposed to be." Julian turned to him, eyes wide. "You're saying I have to leave?" Theo nodded. "You have to live. You have to go back." Julian's voice cracked. "But if I do, you'll disappear." Theo smiled, soft and sad. "I already am." Julian shook his head. "No. There has to be another way. I can stay. We can stay." Theo's grip tightened. "If you stay, you'll fade too. You'll become one of the shattered. This place, it's beautiful, but it's not real. Not like the life you still have." Julian's tears fell freely now. "I don't want to lose you again." Theo leaned in, pressing his forehead to Julian's. "You never lost me. I've been with you in every brushstroke, every canvas, every dream. But now, you have to carry me forward." Julian closed his eyes. I don't know how. You do, Theo whispered. You always did. The mirror warden raised its hand. A portal shimmered into existence, a doorway of light and memory. Julian stared at it, then back at Theo. I'm scared, he admitted. Theo kissed his cheek. So am I. But love isn't about holding on. It's about letting go when it matters most. Julian stepped toward the portal, then paused. Will I remember you? Theo nodded. Not just in your mind. In your heart. In your art. Julian turned, his voice trembling. I'll find you again. Theo smiled. You already did. The light grew brighter. Julian stepped through, and the world of Virelia began to unravel, not in destruction, but in release. The mirrors cracked, the castle faded, and Theo stood alone, smiling as the last of his essence shimmered into the stars. Chapter 7, The Final Painting. The portal shimmered with light, pulsing like a heartbeat. Julian stood before it, torn between the world that waited and the love he'd just rediscovered. Behind him, the castle of echoes began to dissolve, its walls crumbling into mist, its mirrors cracking with quiet sighs. Theo stood nearby, his form flickering at the edges. He was fading, not violently, but gently, like a candle burning down to its final glow. Julian turned to him, eyes wet. There has to be another way. Theo smiled, soft and steady. There isn't. But there is beauty in goodbye. Julian stepped forward, reaching for Theo's hand. Then don't say it. Theo held his gaze. I won't. I'll paint it instead. From beneath his coat, Theo pulled out a brush, one Julian hadn't seen before. Its bristles shimmered with starlight, and its handle was carved with symbols that pulsed with memory. I've never painted in Virelia, Theo said. Not until now. Julian watched as Theo dipped the brush into the air itself, pulling color from the fading castle. He began to paint, not on canvas, but in space, each stroke forming a doorway of light and memory. Julian saw flashes, their first kiss, laughter in the garden, the sea of sorrow, the forest blooming with love. You're painting my escape, Julian whispered. Theo nodded. And giving you everything I have left. Julian stepped closer. You'll disappear. Theo paused. No. I'll become part of you. The final stroke was a curve of gold, shaped like a heart. The portal solidified, glowing with warmth. Theo's hand trembled as he lowered the brush. Julian reached for him. Stay. Please. Theo smiled, fading faster now. I wish I could. But this is how I love you best, by letting you go. Julian pulled him into an embrace, holding him as tightly as he could. I'll find you again. Theo's voice was barely a whisper. You already did. Light enveloped them. Julian felt warmth, sorrow, and love all at once. Theo's body dissolved into light, his essence flowing into the painting, into the portal, into Julian's heart. Julian stepped through the doorway, tears streaming down his face. Behind him, Virelia collapsed, not in destruction, but in peace. The castle of echoes faded into stars. The mirrors shattered into petals. And Theo's final painting remained, glowing softly in the void. Chapter 8, The Awakening. Julian awoke to the sterile scent of antiseptic and the soft hum of machines. The world was no longer stitched with silver threads or blooming with emotion, it was real. Tangible. Heavy. His eyes fluttered open to a hospital ceiling, pale and plain. A nurse leaned over him, her voice gentle. You're awake. He blinked, disoriented. Where? You've been unconscious for 3 days, she said. You were in a car accident. They said you were lucky. Julian turned his head slowly. A window revealed a gray sky, rain tapping softly against the glass. His body ached, but it was the emptiness inside that hurt most. Theo was gone. Not forgotten, never that, but gone in the way only love lost can be. Julian closed his eyes, and for a moment, he saw the castle of echoes, the garden, the sea. He saw Theo's smile, fading into light. Tears slipped down his cheeks. Later, when he was strong enough to sit up, Julian asked for a sketchpad. The nurse brought one, along with a set of charcoal pencils. His fingers trembled as he touched the paper. He began to draw. Not just images, memories. Theo's eyes, the way they crinkled when he laughed. The garden blooming with joy. The sea rising with sorrow. The forest where time resumed with a kiss. Each stroke was a release, a tribute, a promise. Visitors came, friends, family, strangers who'd heard about the accident. Julian spoke little, but when he did, it was always about Theo. He was real, Julian told a young artist who came to visit. And he loved me enough to let me go. The artist nodded, tears in his eyes. That's the kind of love I want to find. Julian smiled. Then paint it. Let it find you. Weeks passed. Julian healed. Physically, at least. Emotionally, he was still rebuilding. But every canvas helped. Every brushstroke stitched something back together. He began to share his work, first online, then in galleries. People were drawn to it, not just for its beauty, but for its soul. They saw the love, the loss, the journey. They saw Theo. Julian never painted Theo fading. Only glowing. Only smiling. One day, he stood before a blank canvas, larger than any he'd used before. He closed his eyes, took a breath, and began to paint the castle of echoes, its spires reaching into the stars, its walls shimmering with memory. At the center, he painted Theo. Watching. Waiting. Smiling. Julian stepped back, tears in his eyes. You're still with me. And he was. Chapter 9, The Gallery. The gallery stood on a quiet street corner, its windows tall and clear, its walls painted a soft gray that reminded Julian of Virelia's skies. He named it the castle between us, not just as a tribute, but as a promise. A place where memory and emotion could live, where love could be seen and felt. Opening day was quiet at first. Julian stood alone in the center of the space, surrounded by his work. Each canvas told a story, the garden of laughter blooming with joy, the sea of sorrow rising with grief, the forest of stillness thawing with love. And at the heart of it all, Theo. Julian had painted him dozens of times. Not just as he looked, but as he felt. Theo smiling beneath starlight. Theo reaching through mist. Theo fading into light with a brush in hand. Every stroke was a memory, every color a heartbeat. Visitors began to arrive, some drawn by curiosity, others by word of mouth. They wandered the gallery in silence, pausing before each piece. Some cried. Some smiled. All were moved. A young man approached Julian, eyes wide. Did you know him? Julian nodded. He was my partner. My heart. The man looked at a painting of Theo standing in the castle of echoes, his hand outstretched. It feels like he's still here. Julian smiled. He is. In every brushstroke. Later that evening, Julian unveiled the final piece. It was massive, spanning the entire back wall. A mural of Virelia, stitched together from memory and emotion. The castle loomed in the distance, glowing softly. And at its center, Theo stood watching over the world, his eyes filled with light. Julian stepped forward, addressing the crowd. This is our story. A love that transcended time, memory, and death. I painted it so others could feel what we felt. so no one would forget. The room was silent, reverent. Julian continued. Some say grief is a wound. But I believe it's a bridge. A way to carry love forward. Theo gave me that. And now, I give it to you. Applause rose slowly, then swelled. People embraced. Strangers shared stories. The gallery became more than a space, it became a sanctuary. Julian stood beneath the mural, looking up at Theo's painted face. You're still with me, he whispered. And he was. Chapter 10, The Legend. Years passed, but the story never faded. Julian Cross became more than an artist, he became a storyteller of emotion, a keeper of memory. His gallery, the castle between us, grew into a sanctuary for those who had loved and lost. People came from all over to see the paintings, to feel the pulse of something deeper than color and canvas. But it wasn't just the art that moved them. It was the legend. They whispered it in quiet corners, the tale of the artist who loved a ghost, who journeyed through a world stitched from grief, and who returned with a heart full of light. They spoke of Theo Vale, the man who gave everything to save the one he loved, and who lived on in brushstrokes and moonlight. Julian never denied the story. He embraced it. One evening, he stood before a crowd gathered for a special exhibit. The mural behind him glowed softly, Virelia in full bloom, the castle of echoes rising into a sky of stars. At its center, Theo watched over the world, smiling. Julian stepped forward, voice steady. Some say love fades. That it's fragile. Temporary. He looked around, meeting the eyes of strangers who had become family through shared emotion. But ours became eternal. He told them everything, not just the fantasy, but the truth. The accident. The grief. The creation of Virelia. The rediscovery of love. The sacrifice. The return. I painted to remember, he said. But I also painted to heal. To carry him forward. And in doing so, I found myself again. The crowd was silent, reverent. Julian continued. Theo taught me that love isn't about holding on. It's about letting go when it matters most. It's about choosing life, even when it hurts. And it's about remembering, not just with your mind, but with your soul. He turned to the mural, touched the painted cheek of the man he loved. He's still with me. In every canvas. Every breath. Every heartbeat. And he was. That night, the stars above the gallery seemed to shimmer brighter. Some swore they saw the castle of echoes in the sky, just for a moment. Others claimed they heard laughter blooming from the garden outside. But Julian knew the truth. Theo had become legend, not just in story, but in spirit. And their love had become a beacon for anyone who had ever lost, ever grieved, ever hoped. The castle between us stood tall, not just as a gallery, but as a promise. That love, real love, never truly dies. It becomes art. It becomes memory. It becomes eternal.